wait for it, Season 2 of Sports Scene Culture Conversations powered by Reebok. My name is Lerai and I am your host. Sports Scene created this platform for us as the youth to have meaningful conversations about topics that are usually sidelined. And today, I have none other than 3 amazing and successful, powerful women with me. We have Amahle-Jaxa, who is the COO and matriarch of UntilUntil, music journalist Helen Herembi, and Miss Yvette Gayle, who is the COO of Africa Creative Agency and manages talent like Nasty C, Pearl Tusi, and Celeste Ntuli. Ladies, thank you for joining me today for this amazing conversation. We are kicking off our 2nd season. Today we're going to be unpacking whether or not it is a man's world, in light of International Women's Day. We want to challenge and discuss whether or not it really is a man's world. I guess my first question, which I'm going to leave open-ended, is do you think it is a man's world? Yes or no, and why?
It's not a man's world. I make it my world, and I'm the center of attention in my world. I try not to follow the path and constraints that society or men have put on women or the industry have put on women. I kind of live my truth as it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with what Yvette said. I think that there are obviously some systemic hurdles that we have to get over. But I think that the world is for everyone who wants it.
Yeah, my world is definitely a man's world. I work with men only, but I've never been made to feel by my colleagues or by some people that I work with that I'm in a man's world. It is a man's world if you look at it from the outside looking in, but from the inside looking out, it is not. It is my world.
Amahle, you said that you think that it is. How has it been working in a male-dominated industry? And, we always talk about you have to work twice as hard as a woman, 3 times as a black woman. What is it like for you, and how have you found, have you seen any changes over the years working in this industry?
There has been changes in it in the sense that I'm seeing a lot more women in production. Because when you do event productions, the sound guy is male, the videographer is male, the artist management is male, maybe the road runner is a female, but mostly male. So I think for me I spent a lot of my early 20s being loud about the fact that I am a woman in this industry and I can also carry cases to the bar, but I feel like I don't want to. So I don't think there's been a drastic change, but there's an improvement. And for me, I just had to realize that I had nothing to prove to anyone just because I was a woman. If I did my work and I excelled at it, it would kind of appear for itself that it's possible to have a woman in my industry.
Helen, I want to hear what us talking about a male-dominated world and industry, how does it make you feel? What is your stance on that? Should we even be calling it a male-dominated world, industry?
So I feel like what's worth talking about is all the work that ACA is doing. How UntilUntil has revolutionized youth culture, not just in Gauteng, and what I'm doing with Imbali. And none of those things are tied to men. So us constantly centering men makes it a male-dominated space, but we don't need to do that. We can just talk about how amazing we are.
Do you guys find yourselves, having to maybe choose between either hiring someone or working with someone, interviewing someone, whatever it is? Do you find yourself intentionally choosing a female over a male, and why is that?
I had to be intentional at some point because there was that whole thing of how does it feel to be the only woman at UntilUntil? Very boring. And so I remember we were looking for someone to help us with social media, and I had to say to the guys, because you also slightly fall into the habit, and they are in their habits of constantly just picking men. They're just used to it. They trust men more. They are more aligned with them. So I had to make that intention and that rule to say, whoever we're hiring next has to be a woman so that we can get some balance to our company and also some representation.
Being in the positions that you are right now, how do you, sympathize or empathize with these women that are like, okay, well, I want to get to where you are, but I'm in this position? How has that been for you because you're now a successful woman? Yvette?
had conversations with women, and I just try to tell them to, one, think about where you want to go, and try not to think so much about those who are trying to oppress you, right? But you have to do something in order to like stand out in the crowd and say, pick me, pick me. So whatever it is, be the best at it. Be the best at whatever you're doing. Be knowledgeable and educated about whatever field it is that you're in.
Yeah, I also think that the people who feel slighted are the people who aren't willing to fit in. So if you know that you want to do a certain thing in the music industry and you know what the rules of the industry are and you play by them, then you'll be successful, you'll be fine. But the people who feel slighted are the ones who are like, oh, but why don't you choose me because I'm doing this thing? And the problem is you're waiting for someone to choose you when you should be doing what it is that you are doing. Because the way that this industry works is that eventually someone's going to go, hey, those kids are doing something interesting. And that's the thing that's going to sell. And they're going to come to you. So yeah, you want to get the job now. But if you're not willing to play by those rules, go create your own thing. And that will become your superpower.
You're really getting me to think about that. But when you spoke, first person I thought of was actually you, Amahle, because you did that. You went into an industry that wasn't, you saw a gap in it. You were a disruptor in your own right. How did you see that gap, and what was it like going to all these brands and companies and saying, okay, well, I have this idea?
It touches on what she just said of you want to do your own thing, but you still kind of follow the rules. So the way we disrupted is it was kind of like we were annoyed with events in Johannesburg. We've thought of ourselves as multicultural. So I could go to an H2O and listen to electronic music and then go to the club and then go to a festival and it's drum and bass and whatnot. And we were struggling with this idea that why do I have to go to 3 different things, and why aren't events fun? Like, why am I not dressing up? Why am I not, why is it always just about how many bottles you have on the table? And so for us, and we were also lucky to have just creative people around us, and my friends are all very creative.
Have you found that you're in those situations where maybe people have come to you trying to come sideways or whatever because you're a woman, and you've sort of, I guess, taken that opportunity to talk about what really is? Because you know that when you open your mouth, you have a lot of substance and you have something to say. You've been in those spaces. I'm looking at you right now because I'm
because you want a spicy show. I think that my career is a little bit different in that I started extremely young in journalism. And at the time, I was doing interviews with like multi-SAMA award winners who were seeing me as this kid in the sneakers and with the baggy pants and all of that. So I don't think I was being extremely sexualized as I was coming up, right? But I do think that in the instances when people are talking about your looks as opposed to your work, you have to gauge whether, is this a real thing? Like, am I going to get a job from this? Or is this just for your ego? Because I'm not in the business of teaching you as a man how to treat women. But the problem with what you're saying, yeah, I've been modeling, but here's what I can bring to the table, is that then you have super famous people in positions of power, abusing their power, being molesters, being sexual assaulters, being rapists, because no one ever said, yo, that's not cool, don't do that. You know what I mean? And for every maybe 5 women who are like, oh, I do model, but here's what else I do, maybe one of those women got a chance to actually make money doing what they actually do. The rest were sidelined, the rest were in someone's bed, etc., because no one bothered to say, that's not cool.
I want to hear from both of you because I've, you challenged me, but, how do you think young women or people that don't identify as male should handle themselves in situations like that? Because at the end of the day, you are presented with an opportunity. Do you take it, or do you say, he's a man and he's trying to take advantage of me, I'm out of it? What do you do?
It's very interesting because I've never been in that position, which is kind of hard to believe coming through the entertainment space and working with all the rappers and hip hop that I have. But I've actually never encountered it. And I can only say is that, you know, when I started, I was very spicy and I was very no nonsense. And I could see things happening to those around me whose constitution might have been different than my constitution.
Can I just add something to that? I think that often because we haven't had these overt things happen to us, we don't understand the intricacies of them, because like I've got very close friends, and you don't even need to be my friend for me to see that, oh, okay, I understand how this happened. Because a lot of the men who wield this power are subtle in how they do things. So you don't know until you're in it that, so this is what it is. So if you see, for instance, everybody does meetings at this hotel. You've seen it. Everybody does meetings at this hotel. So if somebody says, hey, let's meet at the hotel, and you don't think anything of it because you've seen everybody at the hotel, and now suddenly this man wants to have sex with you, you are going to probably think, oh, I did this to myself. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, just be smart and like don't put yourself in these situations. I think that like predators are going to be predators. People who want to get you are going to try and get you, and they won't do it in a very overt way. And I think we have to have a little bit of
an understanding.
What happens in those situations where, like you said, you couldn't see it coming, you know? Because then that talks to, okay, how do I handle myself in a situation where I'm not prepared for it, you know? Where I did all the things where I, you know, didn't go into that situation that I can see is going to be sticky or whatever, you know? How do I deal with that situation in that moment? Because I often find that, you know, when you're taken by surprise, you would act in a way that, you know, you wouldn't have normally, just because of how the situation is, you know. Amahle, what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's such a difficult one, and I think every single scenario, you know, requires a different reaction to it, or would require a different reaction from you. And I don't necessarily think that every single time you're gonna get it right, but I think when you have a confidence in your abilities and a confidence in who you are, you know, you kind of like just shimmy through the pressure. You know, you don't know, like sometimes we're in these positions where you can't overtly say, stop it, get away from here or whatever. It's very unfortunate. Women have to find slick and sly ways to avoid being harassed, you know, because we live in a world where sometimes if I just say, no, I don't want to do that, you can slap. I was also about to swear. You can slap me silly. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think I have the answer for how you do that. But I do believe when we raise confident women, we then raise women who are sure in their abilities and who can somewhat understand that that's not how things are done. So, you know, the better you're raised, and you can't change how you've been raised, but you can change certain aspects of your life. So raising up your confidence to know who you are, what you're worth, and being able to walk away from those situations. But this is all a novel idea.
Yeah, man, I guess what I'm hearing is that, like, you know, it's okay to be feisty. It's okay to be confident in who you are as a woman, because you're a woman, you know? I guess we've been taught so much to, you know, you've got to be nice to everyone to make it, you know, don't ruffle anybody's feathers and don't annoy anybody, because then you're not going to be able to be in that room again that you've worked so hard to get to. But I'm, you know, having a conversation with 3 women who are already at the top of that, you know. So I guess we were on the journey of, I guess, going into the space or getting these opportunities, the beginning of it. But what happens once you're in that space where you have been given the opportunity, when you're on that platform? Are you still treated equally, or do you still have to work hard to be seen when you are already in that position? Do you still have to work hard to be heard? What is that like? What was that like for you? Because, I mean, you already got past that.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm past it. I think that I've worked really hard to be seen and to be heard, and for the most part, a lot of people take me seriously, whether they have power or not. However, I do think that compensation is a real thing, in the sense that someone who does exactly what I do, like maybe you interview people on camera, that guy will get paid. With me, they'll go, "Oh, Helen, please do it for the culture."
Sure.
So
Favorite.
For the culture.
Yes, and not this show. But for me, like, that is a serious thing that needs to be addressed. And I think that women don't get paid a lot. I think that young people don't get paid a lot. But the same guy who doesn't do his research, whose questions are up, but because he has a specific following or some kind of respect from a specific space, that guy can charge whatever he wants. And I think that's why I'm saying, like, I don't think I've outgrown it. I don't think I'm past it. I think that it's something that still needs to be addressed. I don't think the respect is in question, but the checks are in question.
That's something that's so crazy, because I also, as a young person, you know, I struggle personally being somebody from this, you know, Gen Z generation.
You guys hate us. I hate millennials. They're just like millennials and Harry Potter.
I'm sorry. Being part of this Gen Z generation, you know, where I have found that people do judge us because we are sort of, you know,
Free.
not only free, but we're on some, yeah, okay, I don't care. You know, I'm not going to come and beg you, whatever type of thing, because I guess that's just how, I wouldn't say that's how we were raised, but, you know, that's just how we are, and we're perceived to be that way, in that way, you know. And I also struggle personally in terms of charging as well and asking for something that I know I should be getting. I know that these people can pay this certain amount, but it's like, okay, am I there yet? As a young person, am I there yet? And I you know, I find myself in situations where I doubt myself and my worth. You know, in this case, it's what you're worth, because when somebody is paying you something, they're paying you your worth. They're not just paying you because you slapped this number down, you know? And I know that I have put in the work in these instances. Yes, I still have a lot to learn. I'm still so young. I've only done so much. But looking at what I have done, you know, so how do you deal with those situations whereby you know that you should be getting more than what these people are offering you? They're looking at you as a young black woman, and they're saying, this one, let me just, you know, push her sideways and see what I can do. Am I now in this position? And I'm saying am I, but it's really for anybody that's watching this and, you know, in the same situation, that like, am I now supposed to leave the opportunity because
I've always, my boss always says, well, not my boss, my partner always says that the worst that can be said is no. So in terms of like when you feel shy to ask for something, you know, the worst that can be said is no, and you won't die, I promise. That person on the other side knows exactly what you're worth. So, and unfortunately, we are all in business and we try to make profits. These are not NGOs. We are trying to make profits, okay? So as much as, you know, we all want to be kumbaya and help everyone out, on the other side, I'm going to look at it and be like, where can I save budget? Not obviously trying to pay you what you're less, but where can I try to save budget? But I know Lerai is worth 50,000 Rand, right? So you also have to push that boundary, because if you say 35, I'm like, oh my goodness, 30? And then you're gonna be like 30, and I'm like, okay, cool. I've now saved 25. No, so you gotta push, because you know what you're worth, and you wouldn't have been asked if they didn't know what you're an integral part of whatever campaign or how they want to work with you. So you have to push the boundary. They say no, and then we start negotiating and see where you come. But you don't fear rejection, because you would never have the opportunity if you were not meant to, if you were not the person that they thought of. And like I said, the worst thing that can be said is no.
And so I guess, you know, closing off going back to the question, is it really a man's world? And I think we've come to it. It's the world. And it's how do we deal with each other? How do we view each other? It's not just about me and my people, but it's about you and what you can do. It's about collaborating. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Sports Scene Culture Conversations. This was such a great way to kick the season off. I'm so amped for the rest of what Culture Conversations has to offer. I think you ladies have set the bar way up there. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and have this conversation with me. I learned so much. You got me to think about a lot, to reimagine, a lot, because I'm also, thinking about what does my world look like. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
You are welcome. You are welcome.
Thank you so much for tuning into episode 1 of Sports Scene Culture Conversations powered by Reebok, season 2. We touched on whether or not it really is a man's world. We really challenged that idea and the roles that we play in that. So thank you so much once again to my amazing guests. I look forward to the rest of this wonderful season, to everything that we have, planned. From me, Lerai, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on episode 2. Peace.